Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Lovely to be here with you all as always. And as always, a massive welcome to anyone that might be joining us on Maverick Mind for the very first time. You've just got me today. I wanted to sit down and have a little bit of a riff about something that I know all of us struggle with on some level, and something that I've been having a lot of conversations about recently, whether it be through podcast interviews or with people that I'm working with, or even friends that I have or who are in the creative space. A lot of us struggle with this fear of being seen for our authentic self and embracing the vulnerability of putting our work out into the world. When you're a creative soul and we're really heart driven people, it is the most vulnerable thing to put your ideas out into the world. And those of you who are already sharing, even with the with discomfort, give yourself a little pat on the back for just embracing the bravery that it takes to do that. As creators, our work feels almost like an extension of our lives, an extension of ourselves. And it's right that it should feel like that, because I think we have to kind of absorb a lot of life. We have to live a lot of life and kind of absorb all those experiences almost like a sponge. And then we wring out that sponge, all the water comes out, and it kind of forms this amazing idea through whatever channel you create through, whether that is through clothing design, jewelry, whether that's graphic design, art, painting, sculpture, music, dance, whatever it is. It's a deeply personal experience, or it feels that way. And because it feels that way, we really struggle with the vulnerability of sharing what we're doing. And that's okay if you're somebody that doesn't want to create a life where you just get to create all day. You don't want to create a living from your art. But when you're somebody that does want to create a living from your art, and you're somebody that does want to live that life that we're told is completely illogical, where you do just get to create all day and live abundantly well as a result, it's something that we have to navigate kind of continuously, this fear of being seen or embracing the vulnerability of being seen. I remember there was a time in my life where I didn't really know what the fear of being seen was, something what it would look like. I didn't really know it was really a thing. And I wasn't maybe so aware of how I was getting in my own way in that, right? I was quite good at putting things out into the world, whether that was sharing yoga classes, sharing content online that was about yoga or about meditation, or even things that I was creating when I was starting to put my first business together, my first clothing business together. Drawings that I did, I was fine with. But for some reason, there was like a deeper level of myself that I would not put out into the world. It made me feel massively uncomfortable. I've had this memory coming back to me a lot this week, and I don't know why. I don't know really where it's come from, but I remember there being a time in my life, and it wasn't even that long ago. It was probably 2018, 2017, maybe something like that, where I would get really, really uncomfortable just if I went into my local coffee shop and the barista knew my order before I said it. It's like they knew me that well because I was going there basically every day. I also lived in East London, and everyone was drinking in the oat flat white at that time. So I would get really uncomfortable just that they knew me, that one tiny piece of information about me, know my coffee order. Like, now that seems so silly. Of course, they saw me every single day. And as I said, they hedged a good guess because almost everyone in the area was drinking the same thing at that time. But I remember just feeling really like, how do you like kind of almost like reactive in a way, like, how do you know that about me? You don't even know my name. And it's so silly, but it's a really kind of small example of sometimes how we can feel when we're putting our work out into the world. It's like somebody that you don't know that well might then know something about you and about your life and about your habits, or about something that you've been through, that maybe you're not comfortable with them knowing. right? It's about knowing a piece of your heart or a piece of your soul that maybe feels too dark or feels too personal to share. And those are more personal things in our coffee order for sure. Um, and I think that for me, again, on my journey, I speak a lot about my journey through my last business because I had a lot of the influence comes through Maverick Mind comes through that point in my life because I was really integrating this mixture of things, the mindset, the well-being things, because I was a yoga and meditation teacher and a massage therapist as well at the time, and my ambitions in terms of my fashion business, in terms of what I really wanted to put out there creatively. Now, it was a real time discovery of how to balance those three things, and channel it in a way that was going to really serve my life and serve my vision that I had. And because it was all really in real time and there wasn't really many coaches or many mentors out in the online space that were really giving advice around this specifically, I had to kind of slowly put the pieces together in my mind and make a shit ton of mistakes on the way, do a lot of things that put me way out of balance, to then try and find ways to utilize my creative energy a lot more better. That's not even English. A lot better, and then put to create my vision in a lot more of a fulfilling manner. And in the process of creating that business, there was this like 4 year period before I launched it where I would just talk about I talked about wanting to have my own fashion business my whole entire life. But for those 4 years, it was talking about wanting to own a yoga clothing business because I thought it was logical to put my yoga and my fashion background together into a business, which it was logical. But those 4 years of talking about it, most of those years I could have launched a lot earlier, but I didn't because I was afraid of, I wasn't consciously afraid, it was more of a subconscious fear, but I had a fear of putting my ideas out into the world because then I would be judged for um, having the balls to do that, judge for my designs, because my designs at that time really went in a completely different direction than I thought I ever would. I used to have big dreams of being like the next Alexander McQueen, or when I was at university, I really wanted to be like Andy Möllermeister, or I really wanted to be like Rick Owens. They were really like edgy, high fashion businesses. And there was I, the first fashion business I had, putting out into the world, very brightly colored yoga pants. And I think there was a part of me that was kind of judging myself for that, even though at the time that was really authentically what I wanted to do. But there was still like a past version of me that was like, you should be doing something a bit more edgy, or you should be doing something a bit more, avant-garde, high fashion, that kind of thing. So I had so many fears about putting myself out there. And it wasn't really until I actually hit launch that I realized those fears were there. Part of that story that I've missed out is what kind of shifted me away from the talking about it all the time and annoying all my friends and family to actually taking the leap and launching it was, as I said, I've been talking about it for 4 years. I did the Prince's Trust Young Entrepreneurs Program. I've been through that. I had some samples, but they weren't all together. They were kind of a bit all over the place. They weren't finalized or anything. And I was on a phone call with my mom and my brother. My brother was living in Sydney at the time, and he's like the king of tough love. He will cut you. He'll get right to the point. Sometimes at the most uncomfortable times. But he basically said on that phone call, he was like, "Oh God, you're talking about that again." Talking about that again. If you're not going to launch it, you're literally never allowed to say those words to me ever again. And I got so offended. And obviously, we get offended sometimes when someone hits the nail on the head. And then after that, I was kind of like, you know what? Actually, he's really right. I'm pissing myself off, and I'm pissing off everyone I know. I need to dive in and just do it. So after 4 years of talking about it, I launched it 6 months later. It took me 6 months to get off my ass and do what I needed to do to launch it. And it wasn't until I launched it, and I launched it I think the week before I launched it, I spoke at an event. A friend of mine was actually, she wasn't a friend at the time. She is somebody that I had asked to model for me, and I found models for my first photo shoot just by creepily sliding into people's DMs on Instagram. And Sabi, one of the girls who I asked to model, she couldn't actually make it on the day we were doing the shoot, but she was organizing this event about female entrepreneurs and female empowerment, and she asked me to speak at that event. And it wasn't until I went to that event and I spoke on that stage, first time speaking in public, by the way, but I absolutely loved it, that I really realized what it was that got me in my own way, really why I was so afraid of being seen. It was because somebody in the audience actually asked me what took me so long to do it. And it was the vulnerability of putting my designs out there, as I said earlier, because I think a past version of me maybe had a little bit of judgment around not launching the edgy brand that I had always dreamt of. I was launching something else that was more aligned for me at the time, but still there was a past judgment inside that was still maybe making me think differently subconsciously. And then because I became aware of what it was that I was afraid of, it kind of dissipated. And because I was launching a yoga clothing line and I was a yoga teacher and a very traditional and authentic one at that, I then kind of had to become the face of the brand. And then putting myself out online became quite easy. And it's through the dance of then trying to balance being authentic online while still remaining true to the message that I'm trying to share, that then I learned so much about branding and so much about storytelling and so much about speaking to the audience. And that's really how I started to get over that idea, that fear of being seen. That said, it's not something that I think as creatives we get over completely ever. I think that we tend to be cyclical beings as creators, and more often as women. If you're a female out there, I'm not going to generalize, but I see a lot more in women that we kind of go through seasons, right? We kind of have this kind of seasons of life and death within our creative what's the word, our creative path within what we create. So we have an idea, we think it's the best idea in the world, we create that idea. Through the creative process we have phases where we think it's the shittest thing ever created, and then we have, oh, maybe it's a little bit cool, and then again we think it's shit again, and then by the time we put it out into the world, we've been sitting with it too long that we're kind of over it, and the fun part is over because it's been made, and we want to move on to the next thing. So we then kind of get in our head about putting it out there, because then we have been sitting with it for way too long to really be able to see it from an objective space and see how the audience might see it. And this is a really potent and critical part of doing the hard things, of putting your work out into the world. This is like this pivotal point on the creative path where we can share it knowing that somebody else along their path will see it and see themselves in it and fall in love with it and want to buy it or want to buy into what you're sharing. Or we can hide it away because we're too afraid, because we can't see beyond our own nose, because we can't see how somebody else might want it, or somebody else might not have the same thoughts about it as we do. And this is kind of constant dance. And I'm here really to guide you through that moment of, yeah, you might have kind of lost love with it, or you might have been sitting with it a bit too long, but there's somebody out there who's going to see it with fresh eyes, and they need to see you, they need to see your work, they need to see you putting yourself out there in whatever way you're comfortable to do that. I speak to so many creatives who tell me everything they don't want to do. They don't like, or everything they don't like. I don't like marketing. I don't like sales. I don't like putting myself out there on social media. It just makes me feel uncomfortable, and it really is not part of the creative process that I get excited about. And those things are fine. To acknowledge the things that maybe we're not as pumped about, or maybe we're not as um and adept at is a good thing. To know your weaknesses is a great thing. However, you have to see beyond those things. It's like, you want to be able to create a business from your creations, or you want to be able to live that life where you get to create on your own terms and live on your own terms. However, you don't want to do the bit in the middle, the messy middle of stuff, of learning and growing and doing things that maybe you're not so excited about. So, what we need to do is shift it away from our vision of the version of doing those things that we don't like or that we don't feel inspired by, and to find a way of putting yourself out into the world that you are currently comfortable with, and that you are embracing, and that you are even a little bit excited about. I'm going to say, I hope you can be more than a little bit, but sometimes there are things that we just need to kind of find a little grain of excitement for. And that can be just that we're excited to do our admin because it puts some piece of the puzzle together to bring us along our vision. We're excited to put our website together because, again, it's a tiny piece of the puzzle in the bigger picture. And as I said, you have to kind of get a little bit excited about that. So I wanted to share a few steps or a few kind of key principles that I've learned along my journey, along studying so much about creative energy through mindfulness, through yoga, through my own experience and mindful psychology, to kind of guide you through that fear of being seen and to embrace the vulnerability of showing up anyway. The first one is to acknowledge the fear. As I said, when I acknowledged the fear, it kind of lost its power, right? I didn't realize it was there for 4 whole years. Can you believe that? But then when I did realize that it was there, it kind of dissipated. And fears like that. Fear is a really interesting subject. I was leading a class the other day. This is something you probably don't even know about me because I do not share it on this channel, but I do share it with my clients, and it's a really massive part of actually how I coach people. And I was teaching a somatic healing class a couple of weeks ago now. And those who don't know what somatic healing is, it's basically finding where our beliefs, our thoughts, our memories, our emotions are kind of happening, or the blueprint of those beliefs is within our nervous system. So we go into our memories and we go into those emotions and go into those beliefs through the felt sense of the body. For example, we can feel fear through a tension or a feeling of closure in the throat, or we can feel fear through tension in the shoulders, or maybe sometimes you can feel it really deep within the muscles, really deep within your hips, or anywhere else within the body. And we go into the fear, we kind of turn towards the fear. I'm using the word fear because we can use this technique for so many other things, or limiting beliefs, past traumas, etc. We go into it and we really experience it almost face to face. And through experiencing it through sensation and visualization, it then slowly starts to dissipate and it kind of lifts, and you get this releasing feeling of kind of it's a literal feeling of feeling the fear and letting it go. That quote that's like, feel the fear and do it anyway, or whatever it is. It's almost exactly when we're doing somatic healing around fear, it's exactly that. You feel the fear as a sensation in the body, and then you slowly start to let it go. And this is a really potent dance to make. And that's really what we have to do when we have any kind of fear, whether you're fearing being seen, whether you're fearing failure, whether you're fearing success. A lot of us have a huge fear of success without even realizing it, but that's another story for another day. And we turn towards this fear of being seen, almost as if we're turning toward another character or a person or something, and really see it, really look at the fear eye to eye. And you really notice the body patterns, how your body kind of holds and how your body recognizes that fear, and then how it shifts as you're sitting with it. It's a really interesting thing. And sometimes when you're really taking the time to look at something, it's like when you look at a painting and slowly you start to realize all the other things that are there. When we look at our beliefs or we look at our fears like in this way, in such a deep way, we then realize maybe what's underneath the fear. What's underneath the fear will always be some subconscious belief that has come from somewhere, whether it's a past experience, whether it is just absorbing narratives from friends and family, or absorbing narratives of the world around us. A lot of the time when we're fearing being seen, it's like we're fearing what people might think of us as a person by putting our work out there or by putting ourselves out there, or both. A lot of the time in the creative process, we're really pouring our hearts into something. Or even if you're not kind of completely bearing your soul through your art, maybe it's more you have a fear of, people seeing this as your expression, people not liking something that you've put your time into or you've created from nothing. It's obviously nowhere near as big, but it's almost like every piece of art you create is like having a child and goes out into the world, and we worry that that child or that being is a reflection of us, when actually they're their own entity. They have their own life. And when you put your art out there or you put your designs out there, you kind of have to almost have the same mentality around it. It's like putting your work out there is allowing your work to live. If you keep it locked in a cupboard, it's not going to live. If you put it out there, it has a chance to, be put on walls in apartments of New York lofts. It has a chance to maybe capture someone's heart in a way that a great song can, or, a great poem can, great piece of writing can, or anything else. It really grabs the heart of someone else. And the thing is, this is a really key thing. The thing is, they're not going to see you in that. They see themselves in that. And the thing that connects us between artist or creator and audience is actually them feeling seen by you through what you create. So it's less about them seeing a little corner of your soul, and more about feeling understood by you, whether that's literally or figuratively. For example, if you're creating abstract art, you might not know, or someone might not really know what it is that you've captured. And I think a lot of the time for art, we don't really know what it is we love about it. Something captures us and we can't control that. And as I said, half of getting over the fear of being seen as a creator is realizing that people aren't seeing you. They want to feel seen by you. They want to feel understood by you, because maybe they've been through something similar, or maybe they just like the same aesthetic or like the same vibe. A story, and anyone watching this on YouTube or on Spotify, I can show you this. But there's a piece of art that I have in my house, and it's currently with me in London, the British countryside. I bought it in Paris, and now it lives with me in Barcelona. And it's this. It's a mini sculpture of a piece by Rodin called "Study for the Secret." And those listening and you can't see, it's two hands You can Google what the piece looks like. It's called Study for the Secret by Rodin. It's two hands and they're kind of like moving towards each other. And as I said, it's a mini kind of replica of a massive piece by Rodin. And I bought it in like 2017, maybe, from a flea market in Paris. And I stumbled across it. And it was one of those things that I saw, and I saw it from afar, and it was like I was instantly magnetized to this thing. I don't know what it was that I was obsessed with about this. And it came with, like official certificate. Say it was a official replica of the piece by Rodin and everything. But I didn't really care that it was by Rodin. I was just completely obsessed with this piece of art. And as I said, it's one of those things that I've taken with me to every house that I've lived in since. And it's one of the only things, if my house is burning down, I would take it with me. And I still to this day don't know why. I don't know what it is that makes me so obsessed with that piece of art, but I love it so much. And it's so simple, but for some reason, as I say, I love it so much. And that's the power of what we create. Sometimes the people that you're selling to or you're sharing your work with won't know the literal reason why they are obsessed with what you do, but for some reason it just captures their heart. And as again, they, for some, on a subconscious level, feel seen by you, by what you create. And that is really the power of what we're putting out there. That mini Rodin makes any house I've lived in feel like a home. I don't know why. um and people will get obsessed with a sound that you create, or get obsessed with a song you make, or a kind of sculpture that you do, or a kind of clothing that you design, or a kind of jewelry that you do, just because it hooks them somehow in their heart, probably in a subconscious way, but might be in a literal way. And you can't control that. And I think a lot of the time, getting over the fear of being seen and getting over the vulnerability of sharing yourself out there is to realize the hook that you could have on people. To realize that you could create something that makes any house a home for someone. You could create something that somebody has their best memories wearing. That's the thing that I'm obsessed about with fashion. Side note. I love the idea of clothing having a story. I love the idea that I could design a dress, or I could design a shirt or a jacket, and it goes on to have its own little life, and it goes on to like go to nice parties and has like really crazy nights, or it becomes something that somebody really has this whole life in. I love that idea. And the same goes with art, the same goes with sculpture, the same goes with jewelry, the same goes with graphic design. It's just sort of like that could really become someone's part of someone's story. And that is something that really helped me get over the fear of being seen, because I just tapped into that excitement of, oh my God, what could the story hold for this thing? Where is it going to go? And when I had my yoga clothing company, I had been on the massivest adventure with yoga. I'd spent like a year in total in India. I'd traveled around the world, and I was like, these clothes are going to go everywhere, and they're going to be supporting someone on this great transformation. How exciting is that? And that's really, I think, the power of navigating this fear of being seen and fear of putting yourself out there, or the vulnerability of sharing your heart through your work, is, as I said, just imagining the story afterwards. Do it for the story. It's so exciting to kind of tap into that vibration, I think, for me anyway. Second one, and it kind of goes along with what I've just been saying, and this is something that I think we hear a lot within the business space, and I have a few thoughts about it, but it is a really potent and a really strong thing to come back to, and that is acknowledging your why. We think about the why, and if we think it has to be this big, life-changing, world-changing thing. Something I've discovered in my journey is that we kind of have to have two whys. We have to have the why that's external. We have to have a big mission through what we want to create. And that could be just meeting the hearts of the and doing it for the story, like I was just talking about. It could be a big sustainability mission. That's something that I had with my past business. With this business, it's I have seen firsthand and I've experienced firsthand what having a creative mind can be, the liberation that it can have, and the visionary kind of impact on the world it can have. But I also know that we all struggle with a lot of limiting beliefs, a lot of self-doubt. We are statistically more likely to experience anxiety and depression. And I want to do something about that. I also want to do something with dispelling this stupid myth that all artists have to be broken in order to be successful. It's absolute bullshit. The two things that will make you lose your creative spark the quickest are not having any money and not having great mental health. So I want to do something about that. Those are the really big whys behind this business. But we also have to have another one. And this is something that I didn't have for a very long time. And that is something that I call the selfish why. You have to want to do this because you love making things. And it seems superficial and it seems too small, but you want to do this because you love making things. Making things makes you happy, makes you feel the most yourself, and the world needs you to feel the most yourself. You also want to do this to make money or make a living through what you create. And that's okay to want that. It's okay to want to make money. It's okay to want to create a life where you don't have to worry about money all the time. It's okay to want to create a life that's really rich in experiences and rich in adventures for yourself and your family. It's really rich in, just like slow moments where you get your best ideas. That doesn't come through worrying about money. It doesn't come through hustle. It does not come through the rat race of trying to do it almost to prove yourself or prove something. That's not what happens. So it's okay to have that why too, in that, in fact, we need it. And it's something that I didn't have for a long time. And it's something that now I have to remind myself of all the time, that I'm doing this also for myself. And that's not selfish. You're doing it for yourself, and it's not selfish to want to do it for yourself, because people around you will live a better life when you're really fulfilled in what you're doing. When you're really making things that light you the fuck up, everyone else will be a lot happier. It's just the way it is. So you need a why, a big why, the universal why is what I call it. And we can call it the selfish why. Selfish is not a word that I love, but I can't think of a better one. So if you can think of a better word for that one, then let me know in the DMs or let me know in the comments of this podcast. So the universal why and the selfish why. The third and final step, or third and final tip to navigating the sphere of being seen, or navigating the vulnerability of that, is separating yourself from your work. Your work is what you do. It's not who you are. Your work is not your worth in the world. People liking or disliking what you create has no mirroring, or does not in any way represent your value in the world. It doesn't even represent your talent as a creator. We can want to improve. We can continuously hone our craft. We need to do that. We need to continue. We also need to do that to keep it exciting, right? But what we need to do is shift away from our personality or ourselves being so wrapped up in what we make, because then when you have your whole self tied up in what you do, your whole worth tied up in what you create, when somebody doesn't like it, it's like a personal attack upon yourself, your personality, your talent, the way you live your life, everything. It kind of has this massive downward spiral, and nothing will kill your confidence faster. But if you can feel whole or realize that you already are whole and complete with or without what you make, that what you make is just what you do. It's a great thing that you do, but it's just what you do. And that what you put out into the world goes on to live its own life. It's its own entity, its own energy. It just let it go and let it have its own little life. Then when people do have judgments, or then when people do have questions, or maybe, if you're a fashion designer or you own a small business, when you get a return, someone because somebody maybe didn't like it as much as they thought they would, you won't take it so to heart. We can also then have the perspective to realize spaces where we can improve, and without taking those improvements again as this really personal attack on ourselves, that then want to grow and the need to keep evolving doesn't come from a space of judgment of ourselves, or judgment from what we're creating. It comes from a real passion, and it comes from a real drive forwards. So that is a big kind of topic, and it's a big shift that we have to make. And sometimes it takes a long time to make that shift, but when you do, it's really the gateway to everything. To realize that your work is not who you are. You can be so on fire with passion for what you do and the work that you create, and you can love it. You can spend all hours of the day creating and still know that at the end of the day, while it's a really deeply personal process to make something, it's not who you are. Something that's really, again, kind of adding to that is to really see what you create more like a diary entry. It's more like a riff in your journal. And we grow so much through the act of making something. We grow so much also through the process of putting it out into the world, or getting the bravery to start doing that. That when you actually come to put it out into the world, through whatever way you do that, through social media, through a shop, or whatever else, we're not the same person anymore. You might only be, 0.01% different, or have grown slightly through it, but you're not the same person when you start creating something to when you finish. So once you finish something, it's more like a few lines of free writing in your journal. And so it kind of represents more where you've come from rather than who you are in this present moment. And again, that's a really deep but powerful shift to make in so many ways. We're ever evolving, ever growing. I think as a creative being, we create a new version of ourselves multiple times a day sometimes. And it's really important, I think, to realize that when you share that version of you, it's just a moment in time. And it means nothing about you, whether people like it or not, whether people like what you're putting out there or not. And I'm going to leave you with one other little shift. And this one is quite a funny one. But it pertains more to showing up online, but through social media, Instagram, TikTok, whatever else you use. And that is this: people pay less attention than you think they are. People pay a lot less attention than you think they are. For us, putting our work out there seems like the biggest deal. And sometimes on social media, half your following don't even see it. And the other half, they notice it for a moment, go, oh, like they're doing that, cool. They might like it, and then just scroll on. And then to them, it's no big deal. To you, it's a huge thing. And I'm not saying to not see it as a big thing. It is big and brave. And every time you share something, it is a step along the way. It's moving the needle to where you want to go a little bit. But realize that nobody is ever going to take it as personally or as deeply as you do. Nobody ever will. And that's a good thing. I think sometimes when you realize that people aren't paying so much attention, you have a lot more freedom to just put things out there and just hope for the best and allow yourself to be a little bit messy about it, because people will move on to something else tomorrow, and that's okay. And all we need to do is kind of bug them enough with what we're doing for them to start paying attention. And then in those moments, we're slowly growing and we're slowly refining the way we put things out there, and really building our confidence as well along the way. So I hope you've loved this. I hope you've loved this little ramble about navigating the fear of being seen and embracing vulnerability. As always, do let me know. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify, you can leave a comment, let me know, or leave a review. If you have questions, if you want insights or anything, you're also welcome to DM me on Instagram at @maverickmindco. And as I've been forgetting to do this even more recently, I'm going to say, if you've got all the way to the end of this show, in whatever platform you're listening to this on, please do leave a rating and review. It really helps me so much. And while I remember, we are now on Substack, which is something, again, I've been very drawn to a lot over the last year, and I haven't got around to doing it. So far the podcast's on Substack, and very soon I'll be writing more things on there, more little ramblings for you all. So enjoy the rest of your week, everyone, and I'll see you again very soon. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Maverick Mind. I hope that you've loved it, and if you have, I would appreciate it so much if you would subscribe and write a 5-star review on wherever you're listening to this podcast from. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, I invite you to join me over on Instagram at maverickmindco or on my website maverickmind.elliefoden.com. And I'll see you in another podcast very, very soon.